What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully, everyone had a good Thanksgiving weekend. Better than Matt Eberflus, and better than Kyle Shanahan, who I just saw a meme on social media of him with a Bears emblem. I don't think he's going to leave the 49ers, but holy cannoli. What an ugly season for the 49ers. The Green Bay Packers to the Buffalo Bills beat the living crap out of them. Josh Allen. We will dive into Josh Allen because I have some thoughts. You guys know where I stand on him. I think the MVP race is kind of clearing out for two guys. I did want to dive into the Bills and the Chiefs coming down the home stretch here for the number one overall seed. I mean, as you see in Buffalo, as we know in Kansas City, last year in Baltimore, these AFC venues are huge, huge bonuses to get home field. Obviously, now there's only one bye, so we can dive into that. And I mean, the Purdy conversation, when you compare that with watching him on the same field of Josh Allen, when you talk about a guy that potentially is going to make 200 plus million dollars, I think it's time to have a dialogue, time to have a conversation on that one. Then we will talk about some other stuff around the NFL, from the Eagles to Sam Darnold to just, you know, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. This starts in the offseason. And I think we can go through a lot of these teams and go back to February, March, and April and go their seasons were success and failure were determined then. And then a couple things with college football, from planting the flags and fights to the parody all around college. So we will talk a lot of football. But before we do, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. I was watching, listen, it'd be freezing cold, but Bills Mafia, those games look really, really fun. If you want to go to one of these games, are you a Notre Dame fan? Do you want to watch the Fighting Irish probably host a playoff game? Well, I got you covered because you go to Game Time. You can search by venue. You can search by team. You can search by the event. We just had a bunch of friends last night in Sacramento go see Zach Bryan, who I've seen. He's really good. So if you want to go to a concert, you got to use Game Time. Easiest, best ticketing app I've ever used. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code John for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I guess most people would consider me a 49ers fan. I think my fandom is a lot different at 40 years old than it definitely was when I was growing up. Also, given what I do, like, I would take a great story, a great podcast, more people listening. That to me is way more important than the 49ers winning and losing. Though I want them to win, I was excited to watch them try to make it back to the Super Bowl. But this season, and most people in my life, my fiance, to most of my friends, to most people I'm on text chains with, from California, are massive 49er fans. And this season, like, officially tonight with the Buffalo Bills, the Packers really started it. Like, they started kicking the 49ers when they were down. And it felt like the Buffalo Bills came off the top rope, gave them like the people's elbow. And then they climbed back to the top rope and they did it again. And then they were like, one more time, we'll just climb back and we'll jump on you. And it was tough to watch. It reminded me a little bit of, especially tonight, because you were just, by the time that I had finished recording with Colin, I had gone out to the living room where the game was on. There was like 5 minutes left in the first quarter. I look at Maria. I'm like, how do they look? She's like, actually, they look pretty good. It's 3-0. Christian's already broken off a big run. They look like they have some life. And then within the next 10, 15 minutes, the game completely flipped. Christian McCaffrey's season, and I think career, now are fair to be in question. We'll get to that in a minute. But I feel like the 49ers are a lot like Mike Tyson, the guy we witnessed on Netflix fighting one of the Paul brothers, where the reason we all watched, at least anyone of age, like I miss Mike Tyson in the 80s in the prime, but like Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, some of the mid 90s craziness where I don't think Iron Mike was still the same, but he was still pretty good. And you're just hoping, like, can we just see one right and knock this motherfucker into oblivion? And then you realize immediately, you're like, yeah, this guy's like 58 years old, can barely move. Honestly, he's more likely to have a heart attack or get sick in the ring than he is to connect with a powerful right. And that's what I feel like when I'm watching the 49ers. I'm hoping I can get some version of this team that I've watched the last several years. It wasn't just a contender. I mean, they were clearly one of the best teams in the league. They could beat you anyway. As Collinsworth said tonight, like I've seen this team go into Green Bay in frigid conditions and win a freaking night playoff game as a big underdog. And now you watch them in the snow game, they look completely overmatched. Now, clearly this is the season from hell. Like Mike Tyson is 58 years old, who's had a million injuries, who struggled to train because he got sick. Like it was kind of understandable. Somewhat is understandable. You got Nick Bosa and Trent Williams, two of the best players in the league, nowhere to be found. You have Christian McCaffrey, whose season begins with double Achilles tendonitis. And now he goes down, immediately takes himself out of the game. They claim it's a knee. You know, this thing going viral on the internet made it look like an Achilles. Regardless what it is, I feel pretty comfortable saying his season is over. And dependent on the severity of this that we get over the next 24, 48 hours, like what's his career going to look like moving forward? Because I thought this whole season, like just play, the Achilles is going to rip. It's going to rip. We see it all the time because you get all these other injuries because you're overcompensating. It happens time and time again before the actual injury happens. And then you see tonight, and I don't think we're seeing him the rest of the season. And I think the question mark is, can he ever get back to that 23 guy? And if he can, it's a problem for the 49ers. They just extended and guaranteed him a lot of money. They gave Brandon Ayuk a lot of money. He had his knee shattered. Trent Williams, who is legitimately injured right now. Like, it's not just a problem that he's injured. Like, he's a problem for the 49ers because he's a star left tackle and he's 35, 36 years old. Like, they need to find his replacement. But organizationally, philosophically, the way they build the team, they don't even believe in fucking offensive linemen. They take wide receivers and DBs. You know, Kyle's like, we'll just out scheme you. Well, as you saw tonight, you can't just out scheme everyone forever. The NFL, more than college, is about the X's and the O's. But you still need some Jimmies and the Joes. And you're watching this team be a shell of himself, get the living crap kicked out of him week in, week out. Like Super Bowl hangover. It's not a Super Bowl hangover. It's just this team fell apart. They just came apart at the seams. All their best players, their body stopped working. They got injured. But if Christian McCaffrey's body is going to stop working, like that's a problem for the 49ers. When they give Brandon Ayuk a $100 million contract and his leg gets shattered, it's like, what are you going to do? Depend on Ricky Pearsall, who got fucking shot the week before the season. The doctor said 99 out of 100 people that are in that situation die. Tarvarius Ward, I mean, just the situation from hell with his daughter. There's just, I don't even know what to say. I'm at a loss. But I expect this team to lose moving forward, which at this point, it does not. Listen, the best part about the NFL and the best part about the sport of football, anyone can win whenever. It's why the game is dominating our lives when it comes to dedicating time. NBA ratings in the tank. Baseball, no one watches a pitch till the playoffs. And if it's not Yankees, Dodgers in the World Series, those ratings aren't that high. We consume football because we know every single game, college or pro, anyone can win. You're getting everyone's best effort. But at this point in time, like the 49ers are better losing out because winning 7 or 8 games when you're not going to the playoffs does you no good. There is a big difference of having the 8th or 9th pick in the draft than having the 15th or 16th. Because it's not just the first round. It's literally every round. And sometimes when your season just falls apart And you still have some pieces, like there are still some unknown, like can Trent be healthy? Is he going to be at a high level moving forward at his age? You got to get Bosa healthy. Who knows with McCaffrey? I think we got major question marks. Ayuk didn't just tear his ACL. Like it was a major multiple ligament injury. So can he come back? Like obviously there are question marks there, but maybe this draft, if you have top 10 picks in every round, you can turn it around fast in the NFL. But this season is an utter disaster. I mean, at this point in time, it's kind of an embarrassment. Getting some holiday shopping done this weekend? Pick up some touchdowns. They're on sale at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What else would you expect from the number one place to bet touchdowns? DraftKings has a doorbuster, profit boost, and bet one, get one promotions on all type of touchdown bets. Be sure to check the DraftKings Sportsbook app all weekend for flash deals that will have you dancing in the end zone. Grab some TDs with DraftKings Sportsbook. They're on sale from Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN to opt in. That's code JOHN only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. But one variable that has to change, because in football, like in life, like in any industry that you or I work in, you have to be fluid. You can't get stuck with an idea that you had a year ago or 2 years ago and get new information and not pivot, right? You can love a stock 1 year and 3 years later, you want no part of it. And I've always said Brock Purdy's a good player. He really is. He's a good player. But you watch tonight, Josh Allen is what a max quarterback looks like. That is what a guy looks like that you are willing to give $50, $60 million a year and have no hesitation when you give one of the biggest contracts in the NFL. And obviously, he's a freak's freak. He is, I think, one of the most talented players in the history of the NFL. And he's in this bucket with a couple other guys that are max players. You don't even hesitate. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. And those are guys, and Joe Burrow, that you just pay premiums and you don't even think, you never second guess it because you never have to with those guys. Even with their bad games, they are the type guys you want. Anytime that you are thinking about giving a guy 50 or 60 million and you have to question, like, I don't think my guy's as good as those guys until I absolutely have to and impressed, I'm not doing it. And with Brock Purdy at this point in time, and again, he's a fine player, right? I think he's better than a lot of the media talks about him, and he's probably not as good as the way that Kyle and internally they hyped him up to be. But he's a guy that can, I would say, funnel in and out of somewhere between the 7th, 8th best guy and 15th, 16th. And over the course of a season, his last couple seasons, fell in somewhere in that range. But I can't pay this guy like I pay Josh Allen, like I pay Patrick Mahomes, like I pay Lamar Jackson. If I do that, I'm going to have problems. That doesn't mean he's not a player that I don't want as my starting quarterback. He can't grip a ball in inclement weather. I play in the Bay Area. We don't play a lot of games like that. So that's a variable. We don't have, like in Buffalo, he wouldn't even be an option at quarterback. In Green Bay, in Kansas City. Couldn't play there, right? But in San Francisco, we have a shot. We play 8, 9 home games there. We play every year in LA in a dome, Arizona in a dome. It's a controlled environment for the most of the time. But just watch the game. Like, it's not being a hater either. And I feel like I'm on the side now of all these other people. I think Brock Purdy's a good player. The version I've seen the last couple weeks, obviously gives you pause. But the 49ers are a fucking disaster. From a coaching standpoint, with Kyle Shanahan, the defensive coordinator is a guy 99% of football fans wouldn't be able to point out of the lineup. I don't think he would have been on the defensive coordinator, given the stakes that were on the line for this franchise, probably of any other team. But Kyle kind of had to fire Steve Wilkes last year despite going to the Super Bowl because Fred Warner and Nick Bosa didn't think he knew what he was doing. And they weren't wrong. And then his options at defensive coordinator were kind of limited. It wasn't a great field. So, like, do you get a new defensive coordinator? You're basically your fourth one in 4 years. Weird spot. You know, compare that to the Buffalo Bills, who Josh Allen makes up for a lot of things, right? I mean, let's just face it. When you have a player that's that good, even when you have other issues going on, you just ride them like Secretariat. And I've been beating this drum for a long time. If my quarterback does not have traits that resemble some of that, you would have to fire me before I sign up for $200+ million on a quarterback, because I'm basically just signing up to lose. I have been one of the harshest critics every time I see these NBA players. It's like, wait, they just gave who $200 million? Is that guy even the top 15 player in the league? No, but he could be, maybe. It's like, oh, they're going to lose. I mean, you just see it time and time again. And football used to not be like that, and it kind of became that. Like, yeah, two is good, but you're paying him how much? Trevor Lawrence, 200, you're paying him how much? Like, that's crazy. There are 4 or 5 guys that deserve it, that are worth it. Any other guy, you're playing with fire. You're seriously playing with fire. Jalen Hurts was playing with fire. You had Saquon Barkley, who might win the MVP. Looks a lot better. So I just think, man, you got to be very, very, very careful. And the 49ers are going into the toilet. Well, I think it's fair to say the Buffalo Bills are now and they've been this for the last couple of years, but a serious Super Bowl contender. And their organization deserves a lot of credit. Uh, they made an offensive coordinator move a year ago with Joe Brady, who they look just much better running the football. The emergence of James Cook, the rookie from Kentucky, Davis, they have a physical element to them, right? Before, a couple years ago, it just felt like they had to chuck it all around the yard, which works a lot of the time, but a little like the Aaron Rodgers McCarthy Packers, it helps a lot when you have a running element. When I was with the Eagles and they won the Super Bowl, they played us in the first round. I'm pretty sure James Starks went for like 140 yards. Like, having a guy that you can hand the ball off to in colder weather games, especially in January, helps. And now the Bills, in my opinion, beside like the Lions and the Eagles, are playing as well as anybody in the NFL. The Chiefs have a better record. We saw the Bills thoroughly outplay them. And the Chiefs somehow are going to go like 15-2, but don't even look that good. I did write down the schedules of, can Buffalo get the number 1 overall seed? Because I know Kansas City went in there and beat them. I know a lot of these people really, really well with the Chiefs. They all think Josh Allen is as good as it gets and is as good of a player as they've competed against, not just in the regular season, but in the biggest games of their dynasty. And I think most would tell you he's the best player we've played against. And you look at the Bills, they're 10-2, and the Chiefs are 11-1. Here are the Bills. They both have 5 games left. The Bills play the Rams this upcoming week in LA. Now, the Bills didn't have to travel this week. The Rams coming from New Orleans. So I don't want to say advantage, but you just get a little like, they got to come back. They're probably in the air as I'm recording this podcast. Then they go to the Lions, which obviously the Lions have a million injuries right now, but they are going to get the benefit because Detroit plays on Thursday. They're going to get a mini bye. So that's going to be double advantage Detroit. Games at home, and we're coming off the bye, which it's going to be a really, really hard game for Detroit given their injuries against the Green Bay Packers. So who knows? They could be coming off a loss, and having this all-time great season could be desperate, to try to maintain their number 1 overall seed. But the last 3 games for the Bills are a joke. They play the Patriots twice and the Jets, all at home. So I think it's realistic to say the Bills can go 4-1 in these last 5 games. It's not out of the realm of possibility to go 5-0, but I do think it's fair, like, not being overly aggressive to go, oh yeah, I can see 4-1. And if you go 4-1, that puts them at 14-3. And to have the same record with Kansas City, which, to get the number 1 overall seed, you have to have the same record. You need them to go 3-2 down the stretch. Now, next Sunday night is a fantastic game. Kansas City hosting the Chargers. That is, sign me the fuck up for that one. So that's going to be a really hard game. I think that is fair to say. I am an Andy Reid, Brett Veach guy, but that's a losable game, right? And I think Chiefs fans would say the way we're playing, we could lose to anybody. Then you go to Cleveland, which is just a weird spot. If Cleveland is still trying, there's a tough out. They get the Texans at home, who are not a good team, but kind of like a shittier version of the Chiefs. At Pittsburgh, which is going to be hard, uh, and then hosting the Broncos. So just a tough little stretch. I do think 3-2 would be on the table, and then you would have both teams at 14-3, which, assuming, I guess, Pittsburgh, they have 3 losses because they lost to Cleveland, would have to run the table as well. And, if you go 4-1, they would not have. So you basically have these two teams competing for the number 1 overall seed. I think right now, if I was a betting man, as we sit here on December 1, I would bet on the Bills having the number 1 overall seed. The way they're playing, the momentum they have. And if the Chiefs lose to the Chargers, I think it's very, very much on the table and it advantage Bills for sure. But I think we're going to have a really, really good, fun end of the year. And listen, I think now the MVP race is between 2 people. I think it's Josh Allen and Saquon Barkley. And I think Josh Allen is a deserved MVP candidate, and how good of a player he is and what he's done to this franchise. He deserves to have an MVP on his resume. What Saquon is doing is just stupid. Like, you watch him and it's easy, like last year with Lamar, this year with Josh, Lamar for a large portion of this season, Mahomes in years past, Brady and Manning at times. It's so easy to give to the quarterback. It's just our default move. It's what was so awesome this year about college football is like we didn't even have to pretend like, just give it to the quarterback. There wasn't even a quarterback that deserved it. So it's basically Travis Hunter is getting it. 1, he's a deserving candidate. But 2, he doesn't even need to compete with any of these guys. In the NFL, you're always going to have a couple quarterbacks having great seasons. But what Saquon's done to the Eagles is just, I'd be cool with them splitting it. I really would. We've seen it in the past. We have seen Peyton Manning split it with Eddie George. We have seen Brett Favre split it with Barry Sanders. So I'm cool with that. Now that I said Eddie George and Peyton Manning, it doesn't even sound right. Did he split it with Eddie George? Let me just look this up really quick. Because I'm saying it out loud. It's like, Eddie George won the MVP? I don't know if he did. Who did Peyton Manning split his? He split his MVP with. He split it with somebody. Maybe, Steve McNair, maybe? He definitely split it. Man, that was 2 quarterbacks. That's a bad argument. But I'd go Barry Sanders and Brett Favre. That's what this feels like a little bit to me. And honestly, that's a pretty good comp, given that I think Josh Allen's comp is Favrean. He's more Favre than Elway, though. I didn't really see Elway in the 80s, who I think had some Favre in him. But what a year for those 2 guys. Can I tell you about my new friends? No Days Wasted. The holiday season, means going to parties, hanging out with the boys, having a few cocktails, watching the game, picking it with some old friends. So be ready to celebrate and bounce back the next day with DHM Detox, the ultimate vitamin for when drinking. It's a science-backed, functional herbal supplement loaded with antioxidants and liver-supporting ingredients. You just take these 2 capsules right after a few drinks. And DHM Detox gets to work so you can wake up feeling fresh for kickoff. No Days Wasted is running the biggest sale of the year for Black Friday. Get 30% off all orders this week. Stock up now for the holiday season and your next game day celebration. The Detox supports your body's natural response to drinking by helping break down the toxins so you don't feel sluggish the next day. How awesome is that? Don't love it? No Days Wasted offers a full refund on your first order of a 15-pack, no questions asked. Don't waste time feeling sluggish after a night out. It's a completely risk-free purchase. Feel great or your money back on your first order. Head over to nodayswasted.com/3andout and use code 3andout. That's number 3, ANDOUT, to get 30% off your order. That's nodayswasted/3andout for 30% off and free shipping. And speaking of Saquon Barkley, once the season happens, we spend so much time dissecting week by week, right? Kirk Cousins throws 4 interceptions. And everybody, and I promise you, everybody is going to shit on him tomorrow. And rightfully so. I mean, you get paid $100 million. You throw 4 picks, a pick 6, just an atrocious game. You could be a bad player, right? You could be I don't know, you name it, and throw 4 interceptions, and we're going to make fun of you. You're a highly paid guy, expected to lead a team to the playoffs, playing another playoff team at home and get embarrassed like that. You're going to get crushed. But like, should Kirk Cousins be on the Falcons? Because their season, they're now 6-6. They look like crap. I mean, they really do. They're gonna win the division, you would think. I know Tampa's also 6-6, but Baker's banged up right now, and the Falcons have beat them twice. So I would still bet on Atlanta winning the division. But why did they sign a quarterback and then draft another guy at pick 8? It never made any sense. It's because when they signed Kirk Cousins in the middle of March, they had no intention on drafting Michael Penix. And then over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks, they fell in love with him. And now this week, all you're going to hear is like, should they just start Michael Penix? And I think we'll look back if this team ends up winning 9 games and gets their ass kicked in the first round of the playoffs. Like, why didn't Michael Penix just play this year? Couldn't you have won 8 or 9 games with him and been much more equipped and then not have used that money on Kirk Cousins, who was reported by Jeremy Fowler that if it does not go well, this was a couple days ago, they will trade him? It's like, why are you acting like you have that much leverage? Cousins has a no trade clause. He makes a shitload of money, and his trade value now is diminishing by the week. And he's a 36, 37-year-old guy with a previous major injury whose skill set is probably trending down. We'll trade him to who? For what? Like, who thinks he has much value? So I just think, and it's like, if you have to eat some money to facilitate a trade, you're just wasting 2 years of the Penix contract. It's what bad organizations do. They got cocky. They didn't have a plan, and now they have this situation. I never understood anyone that defended them, because anyone that worked in a front office could have told you, like, you would have known Penix was going to be there at 8 during the fall. But their coaches didn't get involved till after free agency, and then they fell for the guy. And that's what happens when you have all these moving parts and no one knows what they're doing. Yet look at Philadelphia. We talk about Saquon Barkley being an MVP candidate. He has resurrected Jalen's career. Because let's face it, after last year, we're like, it's Jalen's this situation, all this money, they got problems. Now it's like, Jalen, you just got to chill, man. Like, I'll help carry you, make some throws to AJ, make a couple throws to Goddard, and we'll kick some ass. Well, the Saquon move didn't happen today. It didn't happen 3 weeks ago. It happened in March, when any team could have had him for, the Eagles gave him $27 million guaranteed. What if some other team in the league gave him 35, 38? He's not turning that down. Zach Bond, who is going to be an all-pro linebacker, signing Vic Fangio, signing that guy and turning him into an impact player. Knowing in the draft that you could sit there and get Quinion Mitchell, who has been one of the best corners in the draft, and then trade up to get Cooper DeJean. So last year, their secondary was a joke. And Jalen was falling apart because of just their offense was out of whack. Well, then what happens this year? Their secondary is dramatically better. Why? Young star corner, awesome slot corner, who slammed Derrick Henry on the ground. A running back to take a ton of pressure off the highly paid quarterback and make life easier on everybody. That happened in March. So while the Eagles had a plan, the Falcons are just flying blind. Look at the Minnesota Vikings, who are 10-2. Not in a million years. And I was rooting for Sam Darnold. If you told me this year went well, what would their record be on December 1st? And you were saying, hey, it's going well. 12 games into the season, I'd be like 7-5. 8-4 would feel really bold. If you said 10-2 and Darnold's on pace for well over 30 touchdowns and they are right there competing for the number 1 overall seed, look around the league, some of these teams with quarterback issues. The Raiders quarterback situation is an all-time joke. I mean, it's a complete embarrassment. They could have signed Sam Darnold. They gave Gardner Minshew, I think, $15 million. Sam Darnold is dramatically better. Obviously, Minshew is injured now and out for the season, but It is not even comparable between the two individuals when they play quarterback. And you look right now at Minnesota, their season was made not during the season. It was made well before the draft because they already knew they liked J.J. McCarthy. We had been hearing about that since the fall. But they also knew, like, we don't plan on playing this guy. And who knows, depending on how the draft, we don't control it. Maybe we don't get him. We're going to get a guy that isn't free, but we're not breaking the bank for, and who we think we can compete with. And they're competing. Where you look at the Bears and you go, guys, this coaching staff is a joke. You cannot keep Matt Eberflus. It makes no sense. They're like, I'm telling you, we like him. We think his new hairdo, his new beard style, his late wins against completely irrelevant teams who were out of the playoff mix are enough to keep him. And then by Thanksgiving, his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, which was him, and him were fired. So we didn't even basically made it till 24 hours after Thanksgiving. The Bears had already fired their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, and their head coach. These shitty organizations, man, we make such a big deal in season. Like sometimes, like, listen, the 49ers season unraveled when literally everyone got hurt. There's nothing like, no one can foresee that coming. But when you have coaching malpractice in coaching situations, that's on the organization. And they stuck by him. And honestly, for him, the stories that came out today, going in the locker room after that moment on Thanksgiving of not calling the timeout when Caleb gets sacked, which is gross negligence. You could say fired for cause after that moment. To then go into the locker room and try to say, adversity, this will make us tougher. Guys, sometimes you got to climb through the mud. You got to live in the shit to make it to the mansion and live at the top of the hill. And Jalen Johnson just cuts him off and starts lighting him up like a Christmas tree. Any human being who has ever worked in an environment with, and listen, you try to be professional, but whoever is your superior, your manager, your boss, after a while you go, this guy's a buffoon. Even if he's a nice guy and means well, you're like, at the end of the day, our job in football is to win or lose. Our job in business is to make money. And you start not having success and you go, well, like, I'm doing everything I can. I think it's working. And this guy is holding us back. Every human being has a breaking point. I don't care how professional you are. I don't care. Be a pro. Handle it the right way. Be mature about it. There comes a point in time in all of our lives where you draw a line in the sand and you say, no, not today. This ends today. So for Jalen Johnson to light him up and basically destroy him for that second, and like, we're not having this Newt Rockney, everything's going to be all right, we'll keep swinging conversation anymore. Those days are done. Props to him. Now, should it have happened a couple weeks ago? It feels like that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I've been saying this forever, and I will continue to beat this drum. If Kevin Warren is the guy leading your search, and by all accounts, by reporting this morning, it is going to be him, and Ryan Poles will assist him, you got no shot. Absolutely none. Because no coach worth their salt is going to answer to Kevin Warren. It's not going to happen. It never will happen. And if I was a Bears fan, this is the helpless part about doing this and loving a team, is that if the owner can do whatever the owner wants to do. And for whatever reason, I don't know if, Kevin Warren has nudes on the McCaskies. I don't know what he does. But they have basically entrusted him with the keys to the entire organization. That if the Chicago Bears went up for sale, I think it's fair to say inflation, 6-7 billion. I mean, they got to be one of the most valuable properties in all of professional sports in America. And to watch this guy who has accomplished, not in terms of football, like, you want to run point on the stadium, you want to deal with that stuff, PSLs, what flavor hot dogs you want at the kiosk, whether we're going to go with Pepsi or Coke, what beers get the handles, what do our seats, do our PSL holders, do we get USB outlets? Have at it, man. Fucking attack. But when it comes to hiring a coach and setting the tone, there was a there was an article, there were a couple articles that I read this week, and one thing that I saw in the Athletic really jumped out to me. Let me pull it up really quick because it just hit me. I was like, I can't believe that this is in there. It said after the loss to the Patriots, meetings at Hallis Hall grew tense. Some team leaders even floated the idea of benching Williams. That's when Waldron got fired. 2 days later, Waldron was fired. A team source said that Warren wanted changes. A team source said that Warren wanted changes. If I was a Bears fan and I read that line, even if I knew it was true and it was clear we all kind of felt that this guy was in charge, which to me it was obvious during Hard Knocks when Ryan Poles had to give him the details of DJ Moore's contract. I, I was floored. Usually when you see this stuff, like Howie Roseman would give Jeffrey Lurie the details. Parag and John Lynch would give Jed York the details. Like that's the hierarchy of the way it goes, right? Les Snead, McVay talked to Kroenke to give him the details. That's fucking insane. I cannot get over that they are letting this guy run the organization. And as just a fan of football, and the Bears clearly have a lot of talent. I enjoy watching Caleb. Like he's a fun player. These last couple weeks with Thomas Brown has been enjoyable, even for as shitty as they looked in the first half. Like he started gaining some life in that second half. Like that was an enjoyable moment. And I think if you're a Bears fan, like if this Thomas Brown thing goes right, like it wouldn't even be the craziest thing if they hired him. Clearly, Caleb and the offense looks a lot better. Guys like him, former player. I wouldn't do it, but nothing against the guy. I think the 49ers play the Bears next week. So I kind of like the Bears in the interim coach boost. The Jets. Today, Aaron was asked after the game. They were up 21-7 and driving to potentially make it like a 3-score game. Are the Jets going to blow this team out like 45-10? Seattle just got a huge win at Arizona. The Niners are playing the Bills. Their season's probably over. Arizona had or was losing to Minnesota, right? Falling apart. And the Rams had an away game. So you're like, Seattle's just going to blow this and just be 6-6 with these other teams. And then all of a sudden, Aaron threw that pick six and the rest is history. And when you watch Aaron play, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. He clearly isn't the same guy. Of course he's not. He's 40 years old coming off an Achilles. But he is so inaccurate. That's the thing that jumps out to me. He's always been able to place a ball. Like Greg Maddux as a pitcher. Except if he was Greg Maddux, he would also throw 97 miles an hour. But Greg Maddux could spot pitches. And that was Aaron Rodgers. Except he threw such hard fastballs, exactly where he wanted them to go. And now you watch him, I don't feel like he knows where the ball is going. And whether that's his confidence is lost, whether that's just his touch lost, whether that's just a combination of everything, just a guy getting old. But we're watching a guy be a shell of his former self. And he's always been a little bit weird and quirky. So when he's asked after the game about his struggles and he says there are 11 guys on offense, it's like, yeah, guys, I mean, this is the Aaron Rodgers experience. He's not exactly Mr. Foxhole. When shit hits the fan, he's also a mercenary. He barely fucking knows these guys. I think he gives a shit about this coaching staff, right? I think even when he got weird in Green Bay, those were still his guys. And there was a lot of equity built up. This is the problem when you see it in college sports. You see it in the NBA all the time. Sometimes you see it in baseball. When you get this mercenary mode of just go wherever I can for the most money and best for myself, you don't actually give a shit about the team. And in football, like the teammates kind of matter. And you can fake it a little bit, especially in the public, but like your actions speak louder than words. And you're watching a guy, and listen, he's tough. Like, he's getting pepper and he keeps getting up. But, like, does he really care about the Jets? Not at all. And now that his game's lost, I told Colin this earlier today. I feel pretty confident he's not going to play next year. Because if you were doing something, he's amassed a ton of money. He's made hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, there is no other job that I think he's on the hook for like $35, $38 million next year. There is no job in America that would pay Aaron Rodgers in 2025 that type of money. There's no role he could take. That's like what Fortune 500 CEOs make. I mean, these athletes making this type coin, I mean, it's the greatest job in the history of America when it comes to being a W-2 employee. It does not get any better. Absolutely does not. Because unlike the CEO of one of these Fortune 500 companies making 20, 30, $40 million, when they fail, they get fucking fired. Look who gets fired first when you're a player. Everyone around you. You are the last to go. But I have a hard time seeing it, man. I really, he can't run away. He looks miserable. This team sucks. This franchise is awful. Do you want to hurt your legacy? Like, ultimately with Tom, he had made the playoffs a couple years and he tried to eke out one more year and he just said, yeah, it's probably a mistake. I think if Tom could do it all over again, he would not play that last season. I think Aaron was so motivated because of the injury, and I totally understand. But then he gets the opportunity. He has to watch himself on film. He looks terrible. And I've heard some people say, well, look at his statistics compared to. You can't box score scout Aaron Rodgers this year. Because if you have been watching him his entire career and you watch him right now, you go, who the hell is this guy? And it's a 40-year-old guy that's over the hill. I also think sometimes, and I saw Richard Sherman go on this rant a couple weeks ago about Moody, who actually missed kicks tonight too, about how kickers get treated so much differently, right? Any other player on the team, you get screamed at 24/7, 365 by your head coach, by your position coach, by your coordinator, by your teammates, by the fans. Like, everyone's in your ass constantly, not literally, but just always, right? Screaming at you, on top of you, just motivating you, pushing you. It's an intense environment. Sometimes I miss the environment of football. Just constantly keeps you on your toes. I just like everyone being on edge. I think there's a health element to that, to getting the best out of everybody. Some people can't handle it. It's hard. So, hell, it broke me at times. Like, it's an intense environment, but it really helps you laser focus on stuff. And I think, part of any success I've had in podcasting or radio, like, I kind of keep that mindset of just always kind of being on edge, because in football, that's just kind of the way the building is always. Yet with kickers, we treat them sometimes like they're toddlers or like 5-year-olds. Well, it's like, be easy to little Jimmy over there. He didn't mean to do, or like your dog. He didn't mean to pee on the rug. Be nice to him. Don't yell at him. It's like, listen, Justin Tucker has had a legendary career. Legendary. But so have a lot of players. And then they get 34, 35, 36 years old, and they're at D tackle or guard or corner. And then they start sucking. You know what happens to those guys? They get benched. They get cut. It happens every single year on like half the teams in the league. A big name guy whose play completely falls off, and they get replaced during the season. It happens all, or phased out. And yet with a kicker, I'm watching Justin Tucker miss long field goal after long field goal, where his entire career, I never felt like a guy that I've ever watched. You could roll out and it could be 48, 52, 56, 60. It's like, this thing is between the uprights. And now when they roll him out, you just go, this guy's going to miss. This guy is not going to hit it. Now, Adam Vinatieri was kind of like that toward the end of his career. It just starts going. And I don't pretend to be some kicker aficionado or like totally understanding when it goes, when it doesn't go, because we see guys go through rough spells. But this guy's had a bad season. He is one of the greatest kickers in the history of the league. But after today, he is 8 of 16, so 50% on kicks over 40 yards. You cannot trust him on long kicks. And this is the NFL. This isn't college. You're not going to blow out most teams. They would have had a field goal plus lead in the game if he had just made multiple field goals. But he can't do it. right? It's 14-12. He missed a field goal that would have made it 15 to 14. Then he missed another one that would have made it 18-14. It does, and not one person, not a person in the stadium, not a person on the couch, that after he missed the first one and the extra point, thought that third one had a chance of going in. And of course, it missed. And then John Harbaugh's giving him kisses and hugs and saying we support him. You would not say that to other people. You make changes all the time with other personnel. You move offensive linemen around. Hell, the Ravens, the game opens up. Made me nervous because I like the Ravens in this game, and I was telling everyone I know bet the Ravens because run defense. I just thought that it was a good matchup for the Ravens. Turns out I was wrong. And then what happens early in the game? Kyle Hamilton, who kind of plays as like more of this hybrid linebacker, which is a huge reason they're so dominant against the run. Their pass defense has been so shitty, they moved him way back to basically free safety. They're like, we want him helping out on the back end. So they're constantly making changes. You're just going to keep rolling out Justin Tucker to keep missing field goals? I do think kicking is a lot like golf. And when it goes, like, especially in the middle of a season, which is like the middle of a round, there is no fixing it. Like, this is not a fixable problem. And we've seen enough teams that have a kicker that gets injured and bring in another guy and have no problem making kicks. So this is a solvable problem. There are countless guys you could call up and that could make those field goals and could be the difference in winning and losing a game. We can talk a little college football before we get out of here. I do want to hit this. The flag planting and the people freaking out. I saw so many people in the media acting like the kids that won the game. And for whatever reason, this weekend in rivalry week, most of the teams that won were road teams. Arizona State, North Carolina State, obviously Michigan. And they wanted to plant the flag on that's probably the reason you plant the flag, right? Is plant your flag on the opposing team's 50-yard line where their logo is. Now, newsflash, if it's a turf field, which most are, you're not going to be able to plant a flag. You would need like a sledgehammer, a nail gun. You would need some sort of equipment to make that thing stick. So it's really just a symbolic throwing the flag into the turf and getting stuffed every time. It really drove me nuts for everyone acting like, and Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson basically acted like Michigan burned down someone's house. It's not that serious, one. And two, you get 60 minutes to beat the other team. This is not a ditty party. Everyone's consenting to this. And when they bend you over for 60 minutes in a football game, in a rivalry game of this magnitude with all these big programs, they don't get to just make fun of you and do whatever they want for those 60 minutes. They get the next year to give it to you over and over and over again, and you just have to take it. I thought Ohio State thoroughly embarrassed themselves. Now, I'm a human. I understand if I'm a player and I'm pissed off. I just don't think you get to go up and start shoving people. Just go to the locker room. It makes you look way worse. Obviously, the video of Ryan Day doing nothing makes it look even that much worse. But I'm sorry, like, this is not your parents' bedroom. You don't get to just fight for this space. Like, give me a fucking break. You get your ass kicked. You lose one of these rivalry games. Take your helmet off. Go to the locker room and go sulk. And pray to God it doesn't get that ugly for the next 365 days. Because this is college. And there are going to be a lot of college kids in your DMs talking a lot of shit, starting with the players. So I thought this notion of all these media people acting like these teams planting the flag were like criminals. And this cannot happen. These people need to be suspended. And obviously there's going to be some legislation, regulation, people getting in trouble. I'm sure is going to happen. Give me a fucking break. I thought the only people that looked like buffoons were the teams that lost the game. One thing that is cool, and I think this is why college football has taken a jump this season. It's more popular now than it's ever been, highest ratings by a mile. Forever, when you turned on the best teams, you knew who was going to win. You had one or two upsets throughout the season, but for the most part, it's like it was pretty chalky. The same teams won over and over and over again. And now with the transfer portal, which obviously has its issues, all these seasons end. Anyone that is kind of sweet on a team that sucks, I have seen so many people like, this guy's under the transfer portal. This guy's under the transfer portal. This guy's under the transfer portal. And part of that is anyone who's good, whose teams suck, their DMs are filled with other programs. So it's like those guys aren't entering it blind. They have an idea who wants them and what their value is, which, again, I'm a capitalist, whatever. But I do believe that it's made college football more enjoyable. Anything can happen. Now, Ryan Day would lose to Michigan no matter what. The transfer portal has nothing to do with him losing to Michigan. He just has no shot to out-tough them. And me and Colin went into depth on that. Not shocked at all. Born on third base, now somehow back at second, looking at first. Adds Chip Kelly, who runs a pretty soft offense. Of course, he tries to run it right up the middle on Michigan. That's where the strength is. And then that's one of the most embarrassing losses in the history of college football. But on any given game, anything can happen. And that used to not be the case. And that's why this playoff is going to be so successful, because you have no clue who's going to win. Absolutely none. Assuming Oregon beats Penn State, I think we would all say Oregon's the best team. That's who I think should win the national championship. But I wouldn't feel that confident betting on it. I actually think there's going to be a lot of value on the teams like 6 through 10 if you can get them 10 to 15 to 1. Because this fucking thing's going to be wide open bananas. Georgia went into 75 overtimes against Georgia Tech. Now, you could argue it's rivalry games and things get weird, and that is true. But I think part of it is there's not that big of a talent gap in all these teams. Because all these players, the moment I'm not starting, the moment I have to rotate, the moment I'm not just the star of the team, and all the assistant coaches, all the trainers, the athletic department, and people running the NIL aren't on their knees constantly for me. I'm like, see ya, I'll go somewhere that is. Because I think every turn and every door that I open or go to is going to be better. And that's not always the case, but that is currently happening. So you watch college football, it's basically turned into the NFL. Like when you watch the NFL, the Raiders can't beat the Chiefs. As Antonio Pierce said, it's the worst team playing the best team. And as that game was going on, you're not really that shocked. Like, yeah, they could win. Honestly, I thought they were going to win. And it happens all day today. You go into some of these games. Now, it doesn't always play out that way, but you're never shocked when another team, an underdog. It's why the spreads in the NFL aren't that big. It's why when you get above a touchdown spread, that's massive. Right? But in college football, a 7-point spread is like the equivalent to like 18 to 20 points. And we see these big dogs win all the time. So I think however we have gotten here, which will probably sucks for the people working in it because it's tough to figure out and corral and maintain, and just everyone thinks they have the new idea, and it's just all over the place. But it's made for a better product. I don't even think that's arguable. It is more entertaining because it's that much more chaotic on a weekly basis, and it has to be a perfect time given that we now have a 12-team playoff. So we will be back all week talking some football. Hopefully everyone had a good Thanksgiving, and cheers to you and your family, and see you tomorrow. Adios.